part of an RCCI team can be exciting and challenging. There are predictable challenges in motivating and keeping the team focused and in resolving conflicts among team members. Fortunately, there are good ways of thinking about team building that the team can discuss and acknowledge.
What's your reaction to that?
First, understand that all teams experience growing pains. It takes time and effort to move people from just agreeing to serve to real commitment and action.
The forms, the paperwork, sign-off, switching from one place to another, they don't do anything.
Then, if your RCCI team truly represents the racial and class diversity of the community, there will be serious differences about how to address community issues.
That they can raise a family and do that.
Still, the tough decisions must be made about allocating scarce resources. The task is to intentionally nurture a team culture that respects difference as a source of strength and creativity.
Bring these people in to do a session.
Anytime you try to change something, there's an implied criticism of traditional customs. Some people may resent the very existence of the RCCI. Others may feel a sense of loss when their community changes, even if the change is for the better. The RCCI team needs to watch for these understandable reactions. Let's praise those who feel criticized, look to include those who may feel threatened, and support those who feel a sense of loss when the community changes. Most people who resist change have good personal reasons for wanting things to stay the same. Respectful listening leads to learning and inclusion. But your team's mission, your community's mission, is paramount. Sometimes RCCI teams must push on despite resistance, always keeping the lines of communication open and inviting new voices and new perspectives to the table.
And I think if you read that, that's...
Or finalize plans for a project.
Hard work is what brings the community vision to life. It takes real commitment to plan for deep community change, implement those plans, evaluate them, change them, and work some more. Feelings of burnout and disappointment are natural from time to time. Team members need to manage their time well, delegate well, be cheerleaders, and encourage others to cheer. Actively monitor the state of your team to bolster morale and cohesion. Only then can you succeed. And if your RCCI team succeeds, your community is the winner. Let's listen to our roundtable participants as they reflect on some of the challenges they've faced.
Somebody said earlier that the RCCI process is no less than changing the way a community does business. Anybody who's been involved in significant change in communities knows that it's not always a smooth process. I want to ask you now, what are some of the predictable challenges that people getting involved in RCCI teams are going to face? What are some of the dilemmas, the difficulties that people need to be prepared for? And what are some of the responses to those as they come up?
I think that one of the challenges that every team is going to face, and I literally mean that, every team, is that if you are truly pulling in team members who are a cross-section of your community, you're going to have people with different ideas. Not only different ideas on what should be done, but different personalities. Some people are going to be a high dominant person. Another person could be low dominant, but an extrovert. Another person is going to be patient and conforming. Someone else could be impatient and not conforming. So you're going to have all these different personalities coming to play, bringing in different ideas on what should be done for education, what should be done for economic development, and how do you meld that into a decision that everybody can live with. A plan of action, a goal or a set of goals that everybody believes in. And part of the process for us in trying to deal with all the different personalities we have on our team is we have an unspoken rule, and that is that no decision is made unless it's a consensus decision. And that means if it takes us an hour to convince my chairman of the board that no, we're not going to go into cattle ranching, then we'll take an hour to do that. Actually, it took us, I think, 2 days to convince that gentleman. And Perry was instrumental, and we talked earlier about technical assistance, and fortunately Perry was there on a couple of occasions where he led us through the discussion. And I think sometimes without an outside person being there, that you get caught up in the personalities. You get caught up in, I want my goal to be the goal, or one of the goals anyways. And when someone from the outside comes in and helps you and assists you in talking it through, you're not attacking that person. They're not thought of as a threat, so it's real good to have an outside person to come in to sometimes smooth your way through those things. I like the phrase that Claire had coined earlier called, she said, positive dissonance. You will have people who for whatever reason, doesn't share the group's philosophy, but they're necessary. They are. Because you are then going to face within your group the same types of bullets and arrows that you will face by the larger community. And if you can overcome the difference in ideals within your own group, it becomes much more easier then to sell those ideals to the community at large who you're really trying to help. So I think that for us, that was one of the hardest challenges to get over, is the idea that with the different ideas, the different personalities, that we needed that buy-in and we had to do it by consensus. And
also, there's the challenge or reality that there are people who have vested interests in the status quo. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, maybe it's the good old days, whatever, they're not really committed to change. And some of those people are probably the people you need to have on your team. And it's kind of a convincing act to show that you will profit or you will benefit in some way.
When we first came together, there was a lot of trust issues that people had to deal with, and that was because it had never happened before, and everyone is in all their little communities, and they stay there, and there's been no real dialogue. So this, I think that the community college has a real opportunity to play a key role in looking at some issues in their community and bringing those different organizations and different people together.
And this whole process has encouraged all of us to, put our own agendas, our own priorities on the table, and then, have them subject to some discussion. And then sometimes through that discussion, you come out with an entirely different view of how you fit in the broader range of services in the community.
We have an initiative we talked about, we call it Math First, which you want to get in to the schools and first focus on that initiative. I think the heat will come after a while is, okay, now what? I mean, how long is it going to take to see results of something like that? You're talking about, if we work on it, initializing the process, and take 2 years doing that, by the time, let's say we come up with some great, wonderful change, everybody in this room would agree would work. By the time you put that in, students go through it, you're talking about something 5 years from now. You might be able to look back and say, yes, at this point in time, you saw this change. So I think at some point, the community will be looking for some type of change or measurable, something you can point to, and it just won't be there for a while.
It seems to me that now that RCCI especially has brought more visibility among those tribal colleges that are participating, it's kind of caused the governments too to say, what is it that we can do with the schools to enhance our collaboration on dealing with economic development and educational access in a more systematic way, I guess you could say, than has occurred in the past.
One of the things that I've seen in our own group is that including having the community college people work with the elementary people has really broadened the scope of the community college people. There's an awful lot to be learned because we're dealing with just one individual when we have them in the classroom as faculty members. They're dealing with a whole family. They can't do very much unless they're dealing with the whole family. So their perspective is much broader, and the commitment is stronger. Their vision is very lasting.
Well, I think that's, as you're doing your project, you've got to integrate the faculty and the staff and make them a part of the planning process and keep them aware of the information that's coming from the community on our campus. As you were talking about a little bit earlier, this needs to be integrated into the overall college planning. And on our campus, we were having a discussion about our plans to get involved with welfare reform, and our faculty were not aware that possibly 162 of our students will currently be subject to some changes in the way they receive their public benefits because their being affected by new TANF requirements. So, I mean, there's got to be an education process that goes along with this. If you're starting some new initiatives, you've got to be able to make the faculty understand that there's a real important reason that you're doing these things with the community.
It may be 5 years from now before that business gets actually open.
Any active, committed RCCI team will face constant challenges. The nature of the work guarantees it. Some teams will want to draw back toward doing business the old way, with a handful of people making all the decisions for the college and community. We know, however, from the success of many rural communities across the country, that the rewards of inclusion and collaboration are terrific and worth the struggles along the way.
Our dream is to empower our community to better access them to the traditional educational system.
How can we make it possible for all of our citizens to realize the American dream? Not just...
In the end, individuals will commit to the RCCI when there's a powerful alignment of their hopes and dreams with the goals of the RCCI.
We think that that's what our college...
How can you nurture and develop in team members a passionate commitment to the work of the RCCI?
Contributing to the economic development and education of our area.
How can you relate the goals of the RCCI to the things your team feels most strongly about?
The dream is that we can finally make a difference and bring everyone together to do that. Thank you.
Let's finally hear from our roundtable of college and community leaders on building passion and long-term commitment into the work of the RCCI.
Being involved with the RCCI project, to me, has legitimized the college's goals in economic development by bringing in other community members and therefore spreading what we were doing in terms of economic development back out to the community with additional ideas. Not only has it legitimized it, but it has given me and the other team members more information, good information on economic development and educational access. It has also given us tools and resources to accelerate that economic development and educational access movement, which we were doing prior to RCCI. This is speeding up the process for us. And for me, I am an impatient person, so I love it.
For me, RCCI just kind of fit beautifully with my own experience as a community college instructor. I'd been at the college for 28 years. And I'm going to answer this question on a very personal note. To be able to commit to this has allowed me space for reflection. And it's cherished. It really is a cherished time because it allows me to grow, but it allows me to deepen. It allows me to learn a lot of things at all the conferences that we've attended, to listen to voices that are real experts, and then to return to my institution renewed, revitalized, and with a feeling that I can literally take something that's contagious to the faculty, to the whole community of the college, and then obviously to my own Laredo community. And so I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
I'm so excited to see a community use all of its assets, use all of its resources, and all the people getting along and focusing on an issue and coming up with a plan. There may be 1,000 plans, but just to come to agreement on one plan is so exciting. I just can't tell you how excited I am about that. And it's a pleasure to be involved with it.
I had been a trained facilitator, and I have done a lot of team building workshops. Had read a lot about collaboration, the change research, and yet in my job as a curriculum director in K through 12, it was more theory. I had talked about it, but I had never seen it in action. I had seen it in action, and it works. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes you remember the guy was talking about the errors you think are going one way and you find out they're going another way. I've seen all of that happen. I realize that a team is a living organism. It changes, it has dynamics, and all of those things. I've seen that as a reality and not just something in theory.
One part of it that does excite me, all of these excite me obviously, is this emphasis on our own local and regional traditions. I think it's very important that we preserve those traditions that have enabled us to succeed in the future, in the past, and to address the future. And in a time when there's a great deal of cynicism about institutions in America being able to deal with problems, I think that community colleges can play a vital role in solving local and regional problems.
I think race and class still plays a big role as we talk about the pie and how it's divided. That's where the real struggle and conflict comes in. My hope is that through RCCI, we can grow the pie a bit so that more people can get a greater share. Because as it exists in a lot of small and rural places, it's who owns the pie and how it's split. And there are some horrendous fights to go into that. So it seems to me the only answer is to grow the pie so that at least everybody gets a little more, as opposed to I get more by taking from you.
For me personally, RCCI has caused me to stretch my capabilities in terms of extending my professional training and experience to communities that are really appreciative of what I'm able to bring to their table, and they've shown it to me in so many different ways. It's very uplifting. And also I think RCCI brings a real human dimension to the otherwise dull concepts of economic development and educational access, and most important, I think it brings attention to some very positive things that are happening in rural America, and reinforces the mission of community colleges that I think are in the most ideal position to carry out this kind of work.
What I have found over the last 3 years, both in traveling and individually and in groups, is that in rural America, like in Appalachia, although so few people outside our region know, we survive not by being inadequate. We survive by our intelligence, our energy, our humanity, the dedication of the best and brightest people who stay in our communities. And I found that that is also true of African Americans, of Hispanics, and of Native Americans. And I think that this is a noble pursuit because unlike some urban areas, we have been able to sit down in a 3 or 4 year period as a multi-ethnic, multiracial, and really, in a lot of ways, deprived groups, and been able to work in a very constructive and giving way. I think it's been a very ennobling experience to work with RCCI.
The Building Effective Teams videos in the RCCI Toolkit have reviewed many aspects of teamwork. They include modules on why teams, who should be on the team, the work of the team, how the team functions, facing the challenges, and passion and commitment. Use and reuse these videos as you tackle the ongoing, challenging, and exciting work of the Rural Community College Initiative.
Okay, we ready.
Stop the tape and discuss the following topics. How can your team stay open to new voices, including the positive dissidents? How can you manage the process of change in the college and community so that people feel excitement and optimism rather than fear? What other challenges do you anticipate or do you now face that require discussion and problem solving?